everyone, welcome back to Actual English. I'm Jennifer Clyde. It's time for lesson 388 and it's time for Viewer's Choice 3. Today we'll be talking about fights and arguments. One of our viewers wanted us to talk about this topic, and I wonder, is it because you tend to argue a lot? Is it because you tend to fight a lot and you want to learn the expressions and the vocab words related to fights and arguments? Well, fighting and arguing is never good, is it? It can stress you out. It can depress you at times. But I think certain relationships need some, meaning a little bit of fighting and a little bit of arguments sometimes. I think it helps to bring people together, closer. But of course, we're not talking about physical fights, no violence. Anyhow, this is going to be an interesting topic to deal with, so let's get started. Here is Actual Talk.
Gareth, one of the toughest aspects of communication in a relationship is when we disagree, when we fight. I mean, we all do it. Don't you say?
Oh, yeah, we do. Yeah. And I think in Korea, they do a lot of it. They can be a little bit more fiery. And
I've noticed.
Anger is expressed more openly. So I've had a lot of experiences with my wife. Yes, yeah.
Really? Well,
yes.
I do feel that in Korean culture, it's been my experience that there has been a lot of explosive anger because people are very respectful most of the time.
Yes.
Whereas in my country, I feel it's we're more individualistic and we express our displeasure, which could be a bad thing frequently.
Yes.
That's my observation. But I feel it's an important part of communication, if you're honest.
Absolutely. I mean, it's essential to fight for a relationship to grow.
Yeah.
And I think expression of anger openly, like the Koreans do, I think is very healthy. It's bad to repress because then you get into anxiety and depression. But it needs to be controlled and not held on to. I think Koreans kind of hold it on, at least my wife anyway, for a day or two, but she's changed a lot. So,
well, I do also think that we have a lot of options when we don't feel we can resolve them. Like, I'm a big believer in couples therapy or in therapy.
Absolutely.
I think that that's a wonderful thing. I think that it's a good idea to take a time out. That's a trend in the West with kids especially. Okay, we're going to take a time out.
And space.
Right.
Yeah.
And time is a good healer. I never think that it's necessary to get physical.
No. And exercise is great, running and meditation and
The last thing you want is regret, right?
Yeah.
All right, I hope that you enjoyed the conversation between Gareth and Kelly. They were talking about fights and arguments. So here we go. Let's check out their conversation. Kelly began by saying, Gareth, one of the toughest aspects of communication in a relationship is when we disagree, when we fight. Okay, the toughest, the most difficult, in other words, aspect. An aspect of something is, simply put, a part of something. So she's saying one of the most difficult, one of the toughest parts of communication, one of the most difficult aspects of communication in a relationship is when we disagree, when we have different thoughts on something, and when we fight. Because often disagreements can lead to fights, right? And so she says, we all do it, meaning we all fight, don't you say? Okay, I've added something for you just to help you understand what she meant by don't you say. Much more commonly than don't you say, you would probably hear wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you say? You've heard that a lot, right? She basically meant the same thing, don't you say? So wouldn't you say so? Wouldn't you say? Or don't you think so? Is another way of putting it, okay? Well, the point is, she's asking what he thinks. She wants to know if he agrees with her on what she has just mentioned. What did Gareth say? He said, oh yeah, we do, meaning we do fight a lot. We do tend to fight. And I think in Korea, Okay, he's focusing on Korea. They do a lot of it, meaning in Korea, Koreans do a lot of fighting and they can be a little bit more fiery. Okay. Fiery is what? Fiery basically means intense, something that provokes anger. Okay. Fire, think of fire. It's very hot, it's intense, right? It's very heated. So if you say that something is fiery, you're saying that it often provokes anger, okay? But he says more fiery. Well, the correct form would actually be fierier. So make sure you say fierier and not more fiery, okay? So it's fiery, fierier, fieriest. Okay, got it? But just remember what fiery means. It means intense. Okay, something that provokes anger. Oh, I've noticed, Kelly says, anger is expressed more openly. Okay, it's expressed more openly. I've had a lot of experiences with my wife. Yes, he says. So he's talking about his own experiences of arguing or fighting with whom? With his wife. So he's talking about how he agrees. Well, I do feel that in Korean culture, okay, it's been my experience. So she's talking about her personal experience. There has been a lot of explosive anger. Why? Because people are very respectful, whereas in my country, we're more individualistic. Okay, let's take a look at this long sentence. So in the beginning, she says, I do feel that in Korean culture, so she's beginning to talk about the Korean culture. It's from her experience. There has been a lot of explosive anger. Now, if something is described to be explosive, it means that it could poof, blow up, right? But here she means that anger is explosive, meaning that anger could lead to violence. So explosive could also mean that it can lead to violence. So there's been a lot of explosive anger, meaning anger that led to violence. Why? Because people are very respectful. We're talking about Koreans, how Koreans are respectful, whereas in my country, in her country, in Canada, we're more individualistic. Okay. Individualistic. She's basically saying that people are very independent, meaning they don't really care about what others think. They like to do things on their own or even with people, but in their own way, the way they want to do it. They don't want to imitate other people. They don't want to be like other people. They want to be themselves and do things the way they want to do it. Okay? So she's making a comparison. Moving on. She's talking about people, okay, in Canada, Canadians. We express our displeasure. Okay, we're talking about, I guess, unhappiness or annoyance. Okay? If you feel pleasure, it means that you feel happy. You're satisfied. Displeasure means annoyance, a feeling of annoyance. You're unhappy about something. So we express our displeasure, which could be a bad thing frequently. Okay, that's my observation. So simply put, what she's saying is that because Koreans tend to be respectful and Canadians tend to be individualistic, Koreans try to be respectful and hold their anger in. They don't express their displeasure very easily. Okay, they hold it in, they repress it, and then later on, poof, they blow up. But Canadians, for example, they're very individualistic and they express their displeasure. If they're unhappy, they say it right away. So they don't explode. That is the difference she is trying to make. Now, Garrett says absolutely. It's essential to fight for a relationship to grow. Meaning, it's very important, okay? There needs to be some fighting in a relationship to grow. Grow meaning develop. And I think expression of anger openly, being expressive, telling people you are angry openly, okay, like the Koreans do, is very healthy. It's bad to repress. Repress is a word that I just used a while ago. Repress means to kind of have under control, restrain, have under control, okay? So it's bad to repress. If you're angry, you need to let it go and not have it under control, not hold it in. Don't repress it, okay? Now, Kelly says, why? Why do you say that? Because then you get into anxiety and depression, okay? It needs to be controlled and not held onto. Okay, now hold on to something, hold on to, held on to. Hold on to something means to keep something, okay, right? Hold on to this. If you say that to somebody, it means hold on to it. Keep it. Don't give it away. Keep it. Don't put it down. Hold it in your hands. Keep it. Okay, that's true, but here he's talking about anger or feelings of displeasure. It needs to be controlled and not held on to. Meaning, you have to be expressive sometimes, let it go, hold on to some things, control it, balance it, and not just keep everything inside. Don't hold on to everything, okay? I think Koreans kind of hold on to it. At least my wife, he says. Maybe not all Koreans, but his wife holds on to her feelings or her anger, okay? For how long? For a day or two. Meaning maybe for a day or at the longest 2 days, but she's changed a lot. Well, I also think that we have a lot of options when we don't feel we can resolve them, okay? Now, she's talking about options, okay? Things you can do when it comes to anger. When you're feeling angry about something or when you're feeling displeasure about something, okay? Annoyed about something, there are many options, meaning there are many things we could do. All right? She says, I'm a big believer in couples therapy. Okay. If you say that you are a believer in something, you're saying that you believe that it is effective. And she says that she is a big believer in couples therapy. So she's saying that she thinks, personally, she thinks that couples therapy is very effective. It's very helpful, okay? Couples therapy or just therapy. So she thinks it's good. It's an option. You can go to get therapy, for example. Absolutely, Gareth agrees. I think that it's a good idea to take a time out or take time out. Okay, this basically means to, I guess, make some time on your own, away from something, apart from something. Okay, you could take time out from something, from a job, from your kids, from whatever. It means to kind of stay away from it and not think about it for a while, not worry about it, okay? We'll be practicing that later on with a sample sentence. But the point is, she says that it's a good idea to take time out. It's a good thing, okay, to take time out. That's a trend in the West with kids especially. So kids, when they have trouble, or parents with kids when they have trouble, they do take time out. And space, he says. Space? What does that mean? What he means by space is, if somebody says, I need some space, you may think, okay, is this room too small? That's not what this person means. If somebody says, I need some space, it means that he or she wants to be alone. He or she does not want to talk to anybody, okay? He or she wants to be left alone. I need some space. I need some space. 너무 다가오지 마, okay? It can mean, please step back a bit, okay? So that can mean many different things. Anyhow, they're talking about how time out is good, space is good, and time is a good healer, okay? It's a good healer. I never think that it's necessary to get physical. All right, get physical. This reminds me of a very old song, Olivia Newton-John song. Anyhow, I never think that it's necessary to get physical. Get physical means what? Simply put, it means to fight. Okay, all right? Get physical. Okay, use force. No, and exercise is great, running and meditation. So he says exercise is also good. The last thing you want is regret, right? And Gareth seems to agree. He says, yeah. Now, towards the end of the conversation, they talk about, getting physical, meaning using violence, fighting, using force on people, okay? And so she says, the last thing you want is regret, meaning you never want to regret anything. Oftentimes, an argument, okay, could lead to a fight. It could get serious. It could get violent. And once you get physical, there's no turning back. In the end, you may regret your actions, but it may be too late. So that is exactly what these two are talking about. Okay, with that in mind, let's take a listen to the conversation one more time.
Gareth, one of the toughest aspects of communication in a relationship is when we disagree, when we fight. I mean, we all do it. Don't you say?
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, and I think in Korea, yeah, they do a lot of it. And they can be a little bit more fiery. And
I've noticed.
anger is expressed more openly. So I've had a lot of experiences with my wife. Yes, yeah.
Really? Well,
Yes.
I do feel that in Korean culture, it's been my experience that there has been a lot of explosive anger because people are very respectful most of the time.
Yes.
Whereas in my country, I feel it's kind of, we're more individualistic and we express our displeasure, which could be a bad thing frequently.
Yes.
That's my observation. But
Yeah.
I feel it's an important part of communication, if you're honest.
Absolutely. I mean, it's essential to fight for a relationship to grow.
Yeah.
And I think expression of anger openly, like the Koreans do, I think is very healthy. It's bad to repress because then you
Right.
get into anxiety and depression. But it needs to be controlled and not held onto. I think Koreans kind of hold it on, at least my wife anyway, for a day or two, but she's changed a lot. So,
Well, I do also think that we have a lot of options when we don't feel we can resolve them. Like, I'm a big believer in couples therapy or in
yeah,
therapy. I
absolutely.
think that that's a wonderful thing. I think that it's a good idea to take a time out. That's a trend
Yes.
in the West with kids especially. Okay, we're going to take a time out.
and
But-
space.
Right.
Yeah.
And time
Yeah.
is a good healer. I never
Absolutely.
think that it's necessary to get physical.
No. And exercise is great, running and,
Yeah.
and meditation and
The last thing you want is regret, right?
yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. That was our second listen to the conversation, and now it's time for actual expressions. Let's go through these vocab words and patterns quickly and move on to our final segment. First of all, we have fiery. Fiery. If you can't remember the definition of this word, think about the word fire. Fire is intense, right? So intense, heated, even violent, okay? Something that provokes anger could be described as fiery. Explosive, here we go. Something that perhaps could lead to violence, so uncontrollable would be a great synonym for explosive, as well as violent. What about individualistic? Individualistic, okay? Individualistic. It's a long word. It means selfish, maybe. Selfish does have a negative connotation to it, but yeah, well, it is a synonym for individualistic. Somebody that is very independent and who likes to do things the way they want to, meaning in their own way and not like everybody else. The next word is displeasure, okay? Displeasure. Displeasure, unhappiness, dissatisfaction, repress, here we go. It can either be or re, okay? Either way, repress or repress means to control. Also, suppress. Okay, moving on to hold on to or hold on to something. This means to keep something, okay? not let go and just keep it. Holding on to anger. Holding on to anger is harmful to your health. Holding on to anger is harmful to your health. Perhaps you can tell your friend or a family member that's really struggling with anger and say to him or her, holding on to anger is really harmful. You need to let it out. Talk about it, okay? The next one is take time out. This means to stop an activity temporarily for a short time or to stay away from something or someone. Take time out. Let's take some time out from one another and think things over. In a relationship, the guy could tell his girlfriend, or the woman could tell her boyfriend, anybody, couples, husband and wife. If you think you have a problem, okay, and you need time to think things over, you can say, let's take some time out from one another. Let's take some time out and think about things. Think things over. All right. And finally, we have get physical. Now, this means to just be forceful, okay, to get violent, actually. So it started as a small argument. So in the beginning, it was just a small argument, a verbal argument, but they got physical as soon as John threw his fist at Joe. Means to make physical contact, actually either forcefully, using violence, or sexually. But here we're talking about fighting physically. So it started as a small argument, but they got physical. They started fighting violently as soon as John threw his fist at Joe. Okay? That is all for today's actual expressions. Job well done.
In those times when you get angry or upset with your significant other, there are always two parts to this problem. There is the actual problem, and then there's the emotional side. For example, the often used one is washing the dishes. But there's 2 points there, isn't there? There's the actual problem of the dishes not being washed up yet, and the other one is the emotional side. Can you deal with it? I think it's important to pick your battles. I think if we use the dishes analogy, sometimes, well, let's say the person hasn't been cleaning the dishes for 13 weeks in a row, then I think there's a problem and maybe you need to talk about it. But if it's just been a one-off and it's been a long day and it's in the evening, maybe now's not the time to talk about it. The other thing I think is it's good to have a collaborative approach to problems. It shouldn't be about one side and the other. It should be more together, and you should try and sort out the problem in a cohesive way together.
Welcome back, everyone. It's our final segment, Actual Story. Hope you took a close listen to what Eugene had to say. Eugene B. from the UK, and he's mentioned some wonderful things and made some great points. So first of all, he did mention that in times when you get angry or upset, well, there are options. There are choices you can actually make, right? So let's take a look at what he says. There are always two problems, and he says there is the actual problem, and then there's the emotional side, meaning emotional part of the problem. Okay, what is he saying? As I mentioned, when it comes to arguments or fights, he says there are two parts. One part is the actual problem, the problem itself, and the other part is the emotional side. Okay, what you feel, how you feel about that problem. I think it's important to pick your battles. Battles meaning fights. Meaning you should think before you actually start a fight, start a battle. Is it worth fighting, or is it not worth your time? Sometimes you could let things go. Sometimes, yeah, you need to argue about something. That is exactly what he is saying. It's good to have a collaborative approach to problems. So he's saying that it's a good idea. It's good to have a collaborative approach to problems. Oftentimes, we talked about collaboration in fashion shows, whatever it is. Now, co means together. Okay, so it's good to have a collaborative approach to problems. Basically, he's saying work on the problems together. Collaborative basically means joint. So work on problems together, not just on your own. And then finally, it should not be about one side and the other. Okay? It should be more together. That's the key word, together. And you should try and sort out the problem in a togetherness again, cohesive way together. So here we go. It's all about working things out, not on your own, but together. Okay, together. So he's made some great points. Let's take a listen to the response one more time.
In those times when you get angry or upset with your significant other, there are always two parts to this problem. There is the actual problem, and then there's the emotional side. For example, the often used one is washing the dishes. But there's 2 points there, isn't there? There's the actual problem of the dishes not being washed up yet, and the other one is the emotional side. Can you deal with it? I think it's important to pick your battles. I think if we use the dishes analogy, sometimes, well, let's say the person hasn't been cleaning the dishes for 13 weeks in a row, then I think there's a problem and maybe you need to talk about it. But if it's just been a one-off and it's been a long day and it's in the evening, maybe now's not the time to talk about it. The other thing I think is good to have a collaborative approach to problems. It shouldn't be about one side and the other. It should be more together, and you should try and sort out the problem in a cohesive way together.
Fights and arguments are always very difficult, especially arguments or fights between men and women because we think differently, right? So I think when it comes to arguing or fighting as in a relationship, couples, we should try to consider or think about what the other person may be feeling or what he or she may be angry about, and then pick your fights or pick your battles. Okay, hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Next time we'll talk about another viewer's choice, organic ingredients and products. So please do join me for that. In the meantime, come to our homepage, everyone. Come on over to www.ebse.co.kr. Look for Actual English with Jennifer. And as always, if you have any thoughts you want to share, feel more than free to post them up on our message board. And if you want to check out our scripts, here's a reminder, they are uploaded on our homepage as well, so please do make use of them. That's a wrap for today's lesson. I'll have to say goodbye until I catch you again next time. Take care and bye for now.